Hi, good afternoon, friends. My name is Shobhit. I'm a pass out of MDI Gurgaon. I have, lived. So I have lived within these, particular boundaries of the campus, and at times I also ventured beyond the boundaries at some ungodly hours. And so yeah, right now it's not that that I'm going to talk about that, but yeah, I want to talk about boundaries. How boundaries have always been, why they are essential, and what do we mean when we say the word boundary. So here is the boundary. Yeah. So on a boundary, just think of any village, any nation, any river, every forest. All these were always defined by some boundary, and this boundary would give some identity. For example, in case of a nation, it will give you an identity. In case of a language, it will give you a different identity. So there was all sort of boundaries. For trade regulations, they will give you economic structures. So boundaries have been there for a purpose. The purpose was to give structure, to give order to the things the humans were living, how the civilization was evolving. There were always there were always ways to break those boundaries. So different routes were discovered. So for example, Silk Route was one such route which used to connect two different boundaries or three different boundaries. These routes not only enabled exchange of ideas, they also enabled exchange of goods, religions, thought processes, languages. So this is how this boundaries have always been there. This boundary, although it gave some purpose, it provided stability, it provided security, but it also limited the interaction. It compartmentalized people, it compartmentalized ideas. So for example, haves or have-nots. These were two different compartments you separate. Similarly, we have different kind of religious groups who are being divided by a certain boundary. I have seen this kind of boundaries all times. In case of businesses, we see that the businesses, especially the small ones that we are talking about, they face all kind of challenges. They face all kind of boundaries. So the boundaries that we are talking about here are financial barriers, regulatory barriers, access to capital, access to newer markets to launch their products. So those kind of barriers exist which do not allow a particular business to scale up. So here, I have seen those things firsthand. Coming from a small town in UP, I have seen that how the businesses would struggle to raise capital, and so over time I started my company. It's called Rupee Funding Solutions, where we help businesses raise capital. We focus on helping them unlock opportunities for themselves. So today I want to discuss a story which is very recent, which is close to my heart. So there was a client. He's a retired personnel from military. He wanted to set up his own business post retirement, and he ventured out to set up a compressed biogas plant. The total cost is around 14 crores. He has around 3 to 4 crores of personal investments. He's looking for a loan of 10 years. He comes from a small town in Haryana. The banks there are obviously not very keen on lending. Why? Because the opportunity is small. It's too rural. It's too risky. The entrepreneur is not very. Within 6 months, it will start generating output. At that time, it will rid his surrounding of the Parali problem, because that is one of the raw material for his compressed biogas plant. Additionally, it will provide employment to around 50 families surrounding his area, and it will also contribute to the national development. Why? Because it will be replacing CBG, CNG, compressed natural gas, which India is importing at present. It will be reducing our petrol bills, our fuel bills. So that is how this is how I see that a meaningful change is being created, and it is not only for the client. He actually referred me to a bigger client, to a farmers cooperative, who are putting up a similar kind of complex biogas plant but at a bigger scale. So that is a ripple effect. Everybody is getting benefit because somebody thought that they will go and break the boundaries. Yeah. So coming back again to the boundary word, boundaries were there for a purpose, as we discussed. So ancient city walls, the forts, they used to provide protection from invasion. Trade barriers, they allowed small companies to flourish. Otherwise, there always is that the bigger companies will come from outside and they will flood the market with their goods. But yes, that is how these boundaries were essential and required. They also generate, defined the agricultural limits, trade zones, government systems, and different kind of means of stability. So I wanted to dig a bit deeper into that, how this boundary word came. So obviously the first thinking is that it comes from the word bound, which means to restrict the movement, to hold somebody up. But when I actually Googled, that's not the case. Bound means to leap forward. It means to jump forward. So the thing is that over time, initially it started something else. We saw that cricket photo that we put. A boundary is created. So boundary is there to be crossed. Boundary is there to be crossed. The bound word itself means that you please jump over it. You create new opportunities for yourself. So bound is a symbol of momentum. It's a symbol of potential. So we just discussed about how these boundaries have been helping different civilizations flourish. So for example, Indus Valley civilization, it had very good urban planning, it had very good trade networks, and it flourished by that time. But these are the boundaries which also hold us back from progressing further. A point in case is the stigma of Kala Pani in Indian civilization. So in those centuries it was considered impure to cross sea. So Indians missed out on those maritime trade opportunities. When somebody used to cross the they considered impure, he was ostracized from the religion. Global influence due to that boundary which our ancestors decided not to break. There was an exception to that, which was the Great Chola dynasty. They did move beyond seas. They went to Indonesia, they went to Thailand, they went to Malaysia and Cambodia and wherever, and they set up their trade networks there, and they flourished. They were the mighty Cholas. They were considered to be one of the strongest dynasties of India. Why? Because they decided to take the sea route. And coming to few centuries later, we saw that industrial revolution took place, and how that industrial revolution was brought forward. That was through the invention of steam engine by James Watt. So James Watt, when he invented this steam engine, he did not merely created a turbine or a machine which can rotate. He revolutionized the way industries worked. He challenged, or I'll say he shattered the boundaries of human physical capabilities. His invention connected continents through railways. His inventions led on to industrial revolution, which led to global trade of goods because the output was so high, the raw material demand was so high, and so on. So his one invention. Take another invention, the famous failed experiments of Thomas Alva Edison. So Thomas Alva Edison, when he invented electric bulb, he did not merely created a light source. He changed the way humanity used to function after dark. He changed the concept how humans used to divide their 24 hours. Because now the night was also available for work, for enjoyment, for going out and everything. So yeah, these inventions, they shaped our history, and how those were shaped? Through innovations. So if the breaking boundary is so important, then why people don't break it? Why people don't break it? So I'll say one of the possible reasons might be loss aversion. So we fear losing something more than we desire gaining other. So loss aversion is something. So you have people who are not comfortable with putting their capital at risk, putting their time at risk. On the other side, we have another issue, which is the comfort zone trap. So employees who are not happy with their present job, who have been staying at their job, working toxic relationship with their bosses, but they are still going there. Why? Because they are not sure of what lies ahead. They are not willing to take that risk of venturing into unknown. So these are two of the things which I could think of. However, once those regulations, once those boundaries are broken, then something different happens. For example, we have the recent cases of, say, Zerodha, Paytm. They digitalized, they revolutionized the traditional banking. You have this case of SpaceX, the concept of reusable rockets. It is not only going to cut cost, it is going to revolutionize the way we study universe. Yeah. And other than that, one case which I want to highlight is the 1991 reforms which were carried by India. So India before that used to be a closed economy. There were very high barriers. The trade was highly regulated. It was not easy for foreign entities to set up business in India. But once that so why this was in place? Because again there was a fear that the foreign companies like East India Company, they will come and they will take away all the wealth which is present in Indian markets. Once this thinking was done away with, once the markets were open, after that we saw that an immediate revolution happened. The GDP skyrocketed, the employment surged, and we can see that we have really come quite far. Although if had it happened earlier, like it happened in the case of China, then it might have given more benefit. But yeah, that is okay. Somewhere at some point we have to start. So that was all about breaking boundaries. Now I want to talk about challenging limits and creating impact. So challenging limits is obviously not about just breaking boundaries. It is about creating impact. Whatever movement you do, it has to result into some meaningful action. It has to result into some meaningful impact. So whenever a person or an organization they step out of their comfort zone, the one that we just spoke about, they don't create something bigger only for themselves. They create it for a society as a whole, your country as a whole, or humanity as a whole. In my role as Rupee Funding Solutions Entrepreneur, I am set out to help SMEs explore capital. They should have access to funds which were previously not available to them. So like the one example that I took. So my vision is that those companies which are not getting credit from the formal credit, and that's a large number, 86% of the companies in India do not have access to formal credit. That's a very large number. So they have to rely on credits from unorganized sector. So unorganized sector is your pawnbrokers, your relatives, mummy, papa, sasuma, sasurji, everybody combined funds this 86%, and that comes at a very high cost of capital. So my vision is to enable funding to this particular segment, wherein they can raise money, they can realize their dreams, they can scale up, they can provide more employment, and they can add more value to the country. And just about taking this, I think I would like to mention that when I started on this entrepreneur journey, at that about that time, I was pursuing my CFA, and when I started CFA, around that time I became father of twin sons. So despite going through multiple challenges, I decided that I want to pursue it, and I went through 3 rounds, 3 exams of CFA, cleared them in first attempt. It obviously required immense time dedication, discipline, and I'm proud that I was able to achieve that in the first attempt itself. Yeah. So this is a poster from movie Om Shanti Om, and the quote is from book Alchemist. You might relate that to. So one copied the other. Who copied whom? I'm not going to tell you. Okay. So there's something I want to share here. The universe is expanding every day, every second. New cosmos, new galaxies, new stars are being born every time. The universe itself is breaking its own boundaries. It's not stopping. Then why should we? We should try to see how we can go beyond our own boundaries. The universe is there to support us. It will help you in every endeavor that you choose to go towards. There might be some setbacks, but you have to stay there. Like the speakers before me said, it's a dedication, it's a hard work. It's not how smart you are, it's how much effort you are putting in. And I would, just like to bring this to a close. I would just say that, Cholas overcame their, sea boundary issue. That military person, retired person, he set up a CBG plant. A father of twin sons cleared the CFA. Whatever leap you want to take, you can take. That is all. Thank you.